This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library
enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for. So, Boss, with this Plugout FX thing, you've seen some paid demos of it. You've seen some people like Rhett and KDH talk about how they think that Boss have kind of messed up. Now I wanted to do like a little video kind of imagining what it is that Boss could do with this pedal. I don't think it's beyond saving. I think there's still time that Boss can turn this round and turn what I think is a little bit of a PR nightmare into something a bit different. I think the Plugout FX is an opportunity, and as my daughter would say, Eddie, can you say opportunity?
No.
Oh, you say opportunity?
I don't want to. Opportunity.
Thank you.
I'll try and cut her in saying opportunity here. Boss have an opportunity. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I like about the pedal. There are a few, not many. And what I think Boss need to do to get people to actually be interested in this. So if you're interested in that, maybe also share your own thoughts about what this pedal does or doesn't have that you're interested in. With all of the hate that you would have read about this, you might have missed that this is possible. With a control thing, you can get into your menu. I'll show you how to do this in a sec. So menu, go across, Bluetooth, then the swap function. The source for this, control 1, so you can say source off, control 1 or control 2. Side A, so you can change which two effects you're switching between. Suddenly this becomes a lot more useful, so I could either have a feedback or switch between any two of these things. So for me here, what I think I'm going to do is use a delay and the feedbacker, switch between those two things. So let's exit. So now you've got two pedals. That's pretty useful. I'll try that for my intro. Now, I think there is actually one potentially almost fatal flaw in the design of this pedal, and that is this. Right, we're on delay. When we switch this, if you're, above with this on your pedal board, you are not going to see this screen if your eyesight is anything like mine. So there's no real indication for a pedal that can do a multitude of different things as to what you're actually going to be hearing when you engage the pedal. I think that's a little bit of an oversight, and this is something that they actually solved with the Boss Angry Driver, where this LED, if you were on Blues Driver mode, would go blue, if you were on Angry Charlie mode, would go red, and if you were stacking them, it would go purple. The other thing is you could backlight this. I think it's a bit of a shame that
someone didn't flag that, or that they weren't able to execute that, because that is one key thing that would, I think, really help in the heat of battle. As it is, this screen is not going to be enough, I don't think, to actually see. So if you're actually using it in a switching mode, I think you're going to struggle.
First of all, the form factor. So I think there is room for a pedal like this on people's boards. We've all probably been in that situation where sometimes you need an effect and you think, I don't want to, you know, take up an entire space on a board for this. I'm only using it for one song. You know, I've got Shut Up and Dance, which is in the set, which is like, I need a dotted delay for that. You know, or, you know, I might have songs that I occasionally use a flanger on. You know, bits and pieces. There is a reason that something like this could be useful. With that out of the way, what I don't think people necessarily need are some of the things that are on here. So I think of like the Spectrum in particular. So this is a red pedal from Boss. I think it's sort of only really included here as it was one of the first Boss compact pedals. So I think the OD1, the Spectrum, and there was one other pedal. I think, is it the Phaser? I think these were the first like Boss compact pedals, and as a result they're sort of revered within Boss. But I don't think, for me, there must be a reason that the OD1, Spectrum were kind of discontinued. The OD1 actually I think is pretty good, but were people clamoring for a digital version of it? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, what I think the initial sort of misfiring here is like you're including some effects, like again that touch wah for me on there is not great. There's some cool stuff in there, like DD2 functional sounds good, OD1 functional sounds good, SD1 on here functional sounds good for a digital thing, DS1, you know, some people use it. Flanger, functional, sounds good. Chorus, functional, sounds good. Slow gear on here is not as tweakable as I'd have liked. So there is some stuff in here. I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity because you've got stereo in, stereo out. To have not included a reverb at launch, because you could have, realistically, there are some legendary Boss pedals out there that are no longer in production. Say, for instance, the Boss Fender Reverb tank. Stick that algorithm on here. Let people try that. Something like the RV6, some of those algorithms that are in there. This is the stuff that I think people actually are still using Boss for, not some of the old legendary pedals that have been discontinued for decades at this point. No one probably watching this video, maybe one or two of you, might have tried an actual slow gear. They're rare as hen's bollocks, and people just don't have one. So, you know, are people that enthused by the idea of a digital version of it? A Spectrum, a lot of us are going to be on it, but I'm not sure that any of us need extra Spectrum. It's like a weird sort of cocked-warish sort of thing, like a pedal which is a total throwback, not particularly useful, and not really a good thing to put into an effect pedal like this to convince people that it's a good way to spend their money. Luckily, I think the later 8 algorithms that they added on are slightly better, but I will say again, if you're going to put in the OC2, why not put in more up-to-date algorithms? Like the OC5 is actually a really impressive pedal that does some really great pitch shifting stuff. The OC2 is chewy, sort of retro sort of vibes. Have both on there so that people can, you know, get involved and choose which they like. In that way, here's what I think. If you make some of the actual very well revered pedals available on here, here's another one. So Boss, for instance, they used to have a Deluxe Reverb style amp simulation, right? The 65 something is called. Make that available in here. And I think there is a rich vein of like Boss, even the digital stuff, which is pretty well regarded. If you can make that available in here, suddenly the pedal is useful to a lot more people. I don't know, maybe in the comments you say this is exactly what I was looking for already, but I do think we do need to maybe avoid throwing the plug out with the bathwater. That worked quite well, didn't it? Because there is some real potential here. As I say, stereo and stereo out got some control. The actual unit itself as a concept, I think is not bad. can you salvage this £10 for each new thing? I think you get rid of that entirely. It's already £229. I don't think there's much of an appetite for people to be spending £10 each time they want to add an algorithm. I say you kind of scrap that. If you were to buy a GT1000 core, all of this stuff comes in there, you know, for the ride. That is kind of what we've come to expect. If anything, I think Boss, we've always thought of as not a premium brand, but as an everyman type of brand for me, where it's like people can afford it. And I think that is a thing where if this was, you know, we're going to give you these things for free going forwards, then I think people would actually be quite, maybe not impressed, but at least more accepting of the concept in general, right? This concept that we're going to pay £10 each time that we add any model. You can try it if you want, but you get some silence. I don't think that's been received well, but it's not too late to change that round. Like, I don't think. Now, some people were saying in comments that they think it should be able to stack effects. I don't get the sense that this is what this was really designed to do. And to be honest, with the interface itself, I don't think it would be very useful in that sort of way. It's not the simplest thing to use, actually. Although it doesn't do a ton, it is sort of a bit fiddly, to be honest with you. Can it be salvaged, I guess, is the real question. I think there are ways, right? So I can already see, like, if I had this on my board, there's a few things that I could use this for, right? Flanger, phaser, yes. An additional delay, yes. The SD one, the OD one, yes, I could use those. Again, I think there's things like if you put a blues driver on there, even though it's the digital versions of the Boss stuff, I think people would be a little bit more receptive to some of the more legendary pedals rather than, you know, some of the more obscure ones. If it did really good pitch shifting, I think people would be, you know, open to that idea, but at the moment it doesn't. Here's a real key one that I would have been interested in. Boss have these little synth pedals. Now, a lot of the sounds in them, the SY1 and the SY200, for me are not necessarily exactly what I'm looking for, but there is occasional stuff where you think, well, I could really do with like a really cool synth sound for that. The Plugout FX, in theory, you'd imagine might be able to accommodate something like that. So that's, again, something where Boss have within their collection of digital models even some really cool stuff. If that could get ported over, I do think that there is a bright future, potentially alternate universe where the Plugout can exist. Those are just some things that I think personally. Reverbs and delays are more what people are interested in, I think, than random little EQ things like Spectrum. Sort of special effects, you know, if you think of like, what's that pedal called? The stutter one. Does it begin with G? I can't remember. Anyway, but, you know, special types of reverbs, special types of delays, special types of whatever, you know, like the feedbacker part of that distortion / feedbacker, I think is actually quite an interesting sound, you know, something that could actually be useful, particularly in a modeling rig where you wanted some feedback. I think of other things and pieces like that, you know, like the occasional synth sound. I do think there is stuff that Boss could do with this. I think you've got to get rid of that £10 per effect thing. I don't think people are going to go for that particularly, but let me know in the comments if you think I'm wrong about any of that. And yeah, I'm not over the moon about how it connects to Bluetooth, but in theory, I wouldn't be using that a ton anyway. It's not going to be the sort of thing that needs to be connected to Bluetooth much. I'd say do away with the £10 thing. Also, stick in batch updates so that I don't have to go into individual effects and add them. Just put them all on there. The 16 slot thing, I can't really see how that actually works, so I've not come across any problems with that yet. Seems that you just, you know, install the effects and they install in automatically, so that's probably fine. Yeah, it's not over yet, Boss. Don't throw the plug out with the bathwater.